Joined now by Scot Lehigh, a columnist for the Boston Globe. Good morning, Scott. Welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Hugh. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your coming on. I really do. I do appreciate it. You and I have not been on the air before. We have not met. We have never shook hands as far as I know. Am I right?
I believe you're right about that.
So one of the things I do, it's a little bit of a ritual for a first-time guest, is I have a couple of starting questions, but this is an interview, not a debate. I really want to know where Scot Lehigh is coming from and has come from. You've been a columnist for the Globe since '89, am I right?
No, I have been at the Globe since '89. I've been a columnist from 2000, 2001, something like that. Okay. I was a political reporter for a long time, covered a bunch of campaigns, and basically a political guy.
Oh, you and I come out of the same world. I did center right for PBS for 10 years before taking over an opinion job, but news guys. And so, are you a native to Massachusetts?
No, I'm not. No.
Okay. Was it Brady or was it Belichick?
I'm a Brady guy. In fact, my football loyalties gravitated down to Tampa Bay when Tom went there. Brady has, as Howard Cosell once said of Wellington Meyer, or rather Belichick, has the personality of wet cement as far as I'm concerned. I find him sort of surly and. Why does anyone care about the coach? I like the players, but now that Tom is gone, I gotta find another team.
Well, the Browns are available. I'm here to tell you, you picked right on that one because Belichick is unloved in Cleveland, where he ruined the Browns, got them turned into the Ravens, and then got fired. So you've got one thing going for you as we begin this interview. First question to get our GPS on you. I assume that you can say and that you will say that you voted for Joe Biden, for Hillary Clinton, for President Obama twice, for Secretary of State Kerry in 2004, and for Al Gore in 2000. Am I right?
Well, some of those elections I was covering as a reporter, and I sometimes when I was a reporter, I would say I'm not going to vote for this because it would make me think that as you're covering it, you're kind of you get a little tendentious if you've decided who you're going to vote for. But yeah, as a opinion columnist, I mean. Yes. Did I vote for Biden? Yes, definitely.
And Hillary?
And Hillary, yes. Yeah.
And Obama twice because you're a columnist, right?
2012 and in 2016, yeah, definitely.
Okay, and then John Kerry, you're a columnist if I got it. You might not want to tell me about Al Gore, but you voted for Kerry in 2004, right? You're a Boston guy.
Yeah, Kerry, yes, over Bush, yeah.
Yeah, and I love Boston people. They have the worldview. How long have you lived in the city?
In Boston? Oh God, I don't know. When did I come to Boston? I'm in Maine right now, but I came to Boston in the early '80s.
Okay, so I left in 1978, and I've managed to stay out of there except for a reunion since then. Because Yastrzemski shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, and people in the Red Sox community get upset with me. Which part of Maine are you in right now?
I am near Portland right now.
You're on the northern border. I like that. Have you read The Looming Tower?
Near Portland, Maine.
Okay.
I went to high school in Eastport, which is right on the, very close, right across from Canada, right across from Campobello. But no, this is southern Maine now.
Oh, you're a Yankee. You really are a down east guy.
We wouldn't consider it. Mainers don't really consider themselves Yankees. It's funny, and if you live in the South, they consider everyone who lives in the North a Yankee. And if you live in the North, it sort of refers to a specific kind of old-blooded, kind of blue-blooded person.
I'm just thinking the people that I deal with when I visit my in-laws up in Maine, they're all just kind of flinty, no-nonsense people.
Yeah.
And so
where do you go in Maine?
They live in Freeport. So north of Portland, 40 minutes. And so I've been there often enough. Was Alger Hiss a communist?
Was Alger Hiss a communist? Oh, God. I honestly, I don't even have an opinion on that. You come out of left field in that one.
I've asked every guest who've ever come on whether or not Alger Hiss was a communist spy. Most of them know the answer. Do you not know the answer? Or do you not want to say the answer?
You just kind of caught me. You flummoxed me on that one. I'd have to go back and look at it.
I love to flummox Boston guys. Flummoxing is what I do best. But Alger Hiss was a communist spy. You got to look that up. Now, Just to GPS you, are you pro reproductive rights?
Do I favor the right to choose abortion? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
And do you own a gun?
I used to. I don't have a gun anymore. No, I used to have a rifle a couple that my dad and my grandfather gave me, but I think they're over at a family place in upstate New York somewhere.
Okay. And are you a churchgoer?
What's that?
Are you a churchgoer?
No.
Okay. So are you an atheist?
I'm not a religious person.
Okay. So, but are you an atheist or an agnostic?
I'm probably kind of like a Herbert Spencer agnostic. You familiar with him, the philosopher?
No. Well, I know, is he the Herbert Spencer, that government governs best, that governs least? That the economist Herbert Spencer?
Well, I'm thinking more I think this would be the philosopher. He was kind of considered the great exponent of agnosticism, I think. But that would be kind of where I am.
Okay. Well,
I'm not. My religious problems is everyone has well, not everyone, but there are a whole bunch of different beliefs, and I'm not sure any of them my belief should intrude into your life any more than that your belief should intrude into my life.
100%, but I just believe in the free exercise clause, and sometimes people of the left don't. But let's leave that. I got you GPS. Now to the subject at hand, the January 6th incident and committee. You wrote a column last week in which I am mentioned, and that's why you came to my attention, and I want to write what you wrote. Former close Trump associate Chris Christie has already signaled his interest in running as an anti-Trump truth teller in the Republican primaries. Let's call this what it was. January 6th was a riot that was incited by Donald Trump in an effort to intimidate Mike Pence and the Congress, and doing exactly what he said in his own word last week, overturn the election. You write, Christie said on Sunday's ABC This Week. Those are truths that aren't told inside the red bubble of Trump sycophants and apologists. Indeed, as conservative talk radio host Hugh Hewitt noted in his conversation with Christie, Hewitt never talks about January 6th because if he did, his listeners would tune him out. My first question, did you listen to or read the transcript of that interview?
I listened to the clip. I didn't listen to the whole show. I listened to the clip.
And by the clip, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean the sound that was posted on that part of it, where that was said. That little bit of the conversation.
Okay, let me play for you a 3-minute clip, and then I want to come back to what you said and get your assessment of whether my perspective was accurately presented in your column. I don't think you know this, but let's go ahead and play it. Everybody in elite media, Manhattan Beltway media especially, focused on the censure of Liz Cheney, my friend, and Adam Kinzinger, and they missed entirely the real big deal, which is they adopted rules saying we're not working with the Presidential Debate Commission. I can pretty much guarantee you that that's an issue, and that Liz and Adam are not going to be an issue in the fall of 2022 and in 2024. Why doesn't legacy media cover the big deal, and they only focus on the 9/11 Select Committee, which is actually illegitimate in my view?
Because because what they do, as you know, is they focus on the things that they think will help their cause, and their cause is the cause of the Democratic Party. And so they don't want to talk about the inherent problems with the Presidential Debate Commission and what that's going to lead to in 2024. They'd rather continue to talk about January 6th. Look, Hugh, I have strong feelings about that. I've said them publicly. I said it again today on your show. But enough already. You know, we saw it. It reminds me of the old Marx Brothers routine. You know, are you going to believe me or your lying eyes? We all watched January 6th. We all know what happened. And I think that, but for legacy media, what they want to do is continue to push that and push it and push it because they know that that's harmful to Republicans, and they can see that we're moving towards Republican majorities in the House and Senate without something, cataclysmic happening, and that's what they're attempting to cause. And so that's why they do it, and you know it, and so do I.
I do, and I never talk about January 6th because I like my audience. I don't want them to turn me off, and they're bored. They do not like it. It is illegitimate. Nancy Pelosi quashed the minority. And yes, there are 2 Republicans on it. Liz Cheney's been a fine spokesperson for national security for years. I don't know Adam, but they're opposite their party on this. Obviously, I just am curious Do you think the blue bubble knows how absolutely uninterested America is in the January 6th Select Committee, which is actually a rump parliament gone wild?
No.
It's enough. So, Scott, I want to remind the audience what you wrote in the column. Let's call this what it is. January 6th was a riot incited by Donald Trump. You quote Chris Christie, and then you say about me, those are truths that aren't told inside the red bubble of Trump sycophants and apologists. Indeed, as conservative talk show host Hugh Hewitt noted in his conversation with Christie, Hewitt never talks about January 6th because if he did, his listeners would tune him out. Now, having heard the full clip, is that a fair representation of what I was saying?
Yeah, I think so. You were saying, look, if my listeners don't want to hear about this, they wouldn't be listening to me if I talked about it. It seems to me it's very fair, and it seems to me that Christie is kind of
not Christie. Stop for a second, Scott. Did you not hear me say there's a compound sentence? I say its listeners would tune him out, and they are bored. They do not think. I'm clearly talking about the committee, not January 6th. I'm clearly talking about the committee.
Well, you're talking about the investigation of January 6th. You say you don't even want to talk about it.
The committee. I talk about January 6th like every day, and I tell everyone the election was over the day after the election, and that Mike Pence had no authority to dispense the ballot.
Well, I give you credit on that, but
I don't need credit. I just don't think you're fair to hear. I don't think I'm a sycophant. I don't think I'm in a blue bubble or a red bubble.
Can I say this to you though? If you want to be. I mean, you are in a position to tell some real truths, and I think sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't. I was looking at something the other, an interview you did with Trump, fairly recently. I think I don't exactly when it, but you kind of went on and said, look, I disagree about the stolen election, but I agree with you on so many other things. Some words to that effect. Well, you can't. I mean, this is a gentleman who is essentially trying to subvert the last election and the Constitution by so doing. And that's a huge thing to say. Well, hey, we disagree on that, but we agree on a lot of other things.
Look, if you've listened to this show for any time, that I got a lot of Trump tattoos. And I've gone over this ground. It's like the burnt ground in upstate New York during the revival. I've gone over it with the former president 3 times, and there just isn't. There's no upside to writing the same column, is there? If you write the same column every week, are you writing a column?
Well, there's an upside to continuing to tell an important truth and not to gloss it over like it's a moment of inconsequential disagreement. And to
again, you're laying a lot on that line that my audience wouldn't think, and I'm just saying that a columnist who's trying to represent what happened in a conversation. We'll come back after the break. Got to go up and down and out of the break. And says that I was talking about January 6th when I was clearly talking about the January 6th Select Committee, and they're very different things. And that's what I want to find out if you agree. Let me give you 30 seconds before the break. Do you agree with me that January 6th and the January 6th Select Committee are different things?
Well, I mean, obviously they are different committees.
We're going to come back to you, Scott. Your phone is breaking up on us, so don't go anywhere. We're going to reconnect that. I think you're walking around your house and you're peddling places that the signal doesn't go. Don't go anywhere. Scot Lehigh is coming right back. Welcome back, America. Boston Globe columnist Scot Lehigh joins me, Hugh Hewitt, in the conclusion. This will also be the interview podcast today. Later on the show, we're going to go after the show and continue. So, Scott, you are a columnist. I am a columnist. I have a columnist up at the Washington Post today that takes shots at Mark Esper. All right, that's what we do, right? We take shots. I do feel obliged to fairly represent people. Do you think you fairly represented me in your column?
Hugh, yes, for the 4th time, I feel like I fairly represented you. Yes, I do think that's right. And I think that if you are saying, I will not talk about the January 6th committee because I believe it's illegitimate, I think that's nonsensical. The January 6th committee is the lens through which we are learning more and more and more about January 6th. And if you're not talking about that, you're missing all kinds of developments on that front. And this committee is certainly every bit as legitimate as, say, Kevin McCarthy's Benghazi commission was, which people...
Okay, what's the difference between those two select committees?
You have to talk about stuff. You're just reverting to the same question over and over and over again.
So what is the difference between the 1-6 committee and...
So I think if you are not talking with your viewers about that, you are really doing a disservice to very important news for this country.
Well, we disagree. Now, my question, Scott, is what's the
How can you
difference?
disagree with-
Can you hear me?
Can
you hear me?
How can you disagree with that?
Scott, it's an interview. It's not a debate. I want to get your point of view out there. It's an interview.
No, it isn't. This is a hugely important.
I'm not debating you. I'm asking you questions so my audience will understand what a left-wing columnist, the Boston Globe, thinks about a committee. That
you disagree. So you go back to something else if you don't let me finish.
This is important. What's the difference between the January 6th Select Committee and Benghazi, which you brought up?
What's that?
You brought up the Benghazi Select Committee. It's the most recent Select Committee prior to 1/6 Select Committee.
Yeah,
What's the difference between those two committees?
What is the difference between those two committees? You know, I mean, one was, you have a different, why don't you tell me the difference you want to...
No, I'm asking you, what do you see a difference between them? You're the guest, I'm the interviewer.
Well, I mean, you kind of go around a little bit on what, well, anyway, I do not see a difference between them in terms of coverage, the need to cover them, and the need for people to cooperate with them. No, I don't.
Do you see any difference in their origin and their setup?
Well, they're both House Select Committees. I mean, everything's a little bit different the way they. But the point is, to get back to the point, Hugh, if you are not talking about the news that's coming out of the January 6th committee, and if you are treating it as illegitimate and saying, I'm not going to discuss this, then you are operating inside the context of the red bubble, and you're not doing listeners.
I'm not. Most of my time is spent talking with a member of the Select Committee who critiques my approach to it. But I want you to I'm trying to tease out from you whether or not you are concerned about due process in the United States, because the left used to be concerned. The difference between the Benghazi Committee and the January 6th Committee is that the Benghazi Committee, impaneled by the Republican majority, allowed for the rights of the minority to name their own chair, their own counsel, and have equal subpoena power. That is not the case with the Select Committee. Do you think that's the distinction with a difference?
Well, I think you're looking, I mean, you can find little differences in everything, but if you're saying, oh, my Lord, Jim Jordan didn't get to be on the committee, I mean, he's someone who might have obviously he would not be interested in the role of the committee. Secondly, he perhaps has some involvement here that needs to be investigated. There are obvious conflicts here. So no, I think those honestly are little things that you're taking refuge in that don't, I think, in any way negate the larger point.
Have you ever been sued?
I don't want to get into personal questions about what...
Well, because I was going to ask you about how the representation went. Because the fact of the matter is, when there are two sides, the American legal system and the common law have for hundreds of years guaranteed the rights of both sides to the same.
You're looking for ways to justify ignoring an important and legitimate news investigatory organ here, and I just think it just doesn't stand.
Well, I think you're scared of this, Scott, because I'm explaining why it's an illegitimate committee, why I don't cover it.
You are trying to justify why you believe.
No, I'm explaining why I don't cover it. You think that's sycophantic. I'm pointing out that every House committee in history, has any other House committee in history run this way?
I think that's journalistically irresponsible not to cover it. Yeah, I do.
I've heard you say that. I heard you say it, but I'm trying to persuade you. You are wrong because it is illegitimate. Because it's never been done this way before. It's a one-off.
It's a runoff?
A one-off. Nothing has ever run this way before in the House.
Well, I think if you look at it, you'll find the American people are very interested in it. I think you'll find that that lots of news is coming out of it. I think you'll find that lots of people are cooperating with it. And I think to try to delegitimate it on what I consider, frankly, somewhat silly grounds.
You haven't taught constitutional law for 25 years. I have. The due process clause is not silly. I'm going to come back with Scot Lehigh on this subject, and we'll take our time. We don't have to rush. I want him to get his point of view out. He thinks it's wrong for me not to cover the January 6th committee. He stands by his column. That's fine. We want to get to the January 6th committee. Stay with us. It's on the interview with Hugh Hewitt. All right, back with Scot Lehigh of the Boston Globe. Scott, do you know who's on the committee?
I'm not going to do quizzes with you, Hugh. I'm going to do
not a quiz. It's just, do you know?
Well, we'll sit here and talk about the issues if you want, but I'm not going to. I can sit here and ask you a whole bunch of little questions if you want. You can ask me, and then we can sit back and say, "Well, that guy's a nitwit. That guy's a nitwit. He didn't know that. He didn't know that."
Do you know any members of the committee?
I don't think. Of course, I do. Come on. I don't think that's productive. I don't think that's a productive exercise.
I want to know how deep you're into it. That's what I'm trying to get at. Are you an expert on the committee? Do you know who's on it?
I mean, I would guess I would have to say this, since I write about it and talk about it. I think I'm a lot more deeply into it than you. If you're saying you don't,
then I know the members of the committee. I know them all. Do you?
What do your readers? Did you ever listen?
It's an interview, not a debate, Scott. I'm just trying to get to the bottom line of whether or not you know anything about this committee.
It's a debate when you want it to be a debate, and then when you don't want to answer a question, it becomes an interview.
No, because you're not answering my question. You're filibustering. Every time I've had a liberal columnist on, this happens, which is an interview is not a debate. An interview is about you. You're the guest. I just want to know if you know who's on the committee. It's not a trick.
I'm sorry, I missed that. What did you say?
I said I just want to know if you know who's on the committee. It's not a trick.
I mean, can I sit here and go through every member, name every member without looking it up? No, but yes, I mean, I followed the committee pretty closely. What?
Can you name any of the members?
Of course I can. Oh, come on. I'm not.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, you know your two Republicans on the committee. Do you know the two Republicans on the committee?
I don't know Adam personally. I know Liz very well, very well, and have known her for 15 years.
Okay. So you know that there are two Republicans on the committee, right?
There are not actually two Republicans on the committee. There are two Republicans appointed by Nancy Pelosi to the committee. The Republicans were not allowed to appoint anyone to the committee.
That's the other problem here, is that you guys have to now pretend because they are saying things that you find uncongenial, you have to pretend that they somehow are not Republicans.
No, I don't. They're Republicans. They're not Republicans appointed to the committee by the Republicans. You don't get to the key thing. And I think it's because you're not a lawyer. This is all fruit of the poison tree. Because Nancy Pelosi rigged this, and I mean rigged it, unlike any other committee that has ever existed in the House, I don't cover it because it's illegitimate.
Do you remember what happened here? That there was an agreement that we were going to have a bipartisan.
There was no agreement. You're wrong, Scott. That's wrong.
No, that's not right. That had been worked out as an agreement, and then Kevin McCarthy decided he did not want to do it, and he undermined his own chairman on this, or his own ranking member on this. So, I mean, he obviously did not want to have any kind of panel.
No, you're actually misremembering. The Senate killed the Select Committee bill. The Senate killed it, Scott.
Saying that Kevin McCarthy didn't torpedo?
No, I'm saying the Senate killed it. It passed the House. It went to the Senate. The Senate killed it.
Oh, no. Kevin McCarthy said, no, I'm not in favor of this. They had an agreement.
It passed the House. It went to the Senate. The Senate killed it. Those are facts.
I can Google that, but I just don't think that's right.
Scott, if you're wrong about that, what does that tell us about your coverage of this topic?
Hang on. I'm just going to Google this for you.
Google it. You can find, by the way, Zoe Lofgren, Elaine Luria, Adam Schiff, Pete Aguiar, Stephanie Murray, Jamie Raskin are under the chairmanship of Benny Thompson. That's the committee. And while you Google, let me explain that the House committee that exists is illegitimate because for the first time in House history, the minority did not name its members.
Well, there you're just hiding in process. Because
hiding in process is what the American Constitution is all about, Scott. You're our Boston Globe reporter. Go down the Freedom Trail. Due process is everything.
It's incontrovertible. The Republicans did not want to look at this.
No, it's not. It's incontrovertible that Kevin McCarthy named Jim Banks as the ranking minority. Yeah. And he was vetoed by Nancy Pelosi, as never has happened in the history of the House. Is there any significance to that first-time departure from House tradition? Any significance at all, Scott?
Any significance in terms of saying, we should not then have a committee and not be able to look at.
I'm saying, is there any significance to Nancy Pelosi jerry-rigging a kangaroo court?
It is not a kangaroo court. That's just silly to call it that.
Do you know why it is? How many subpoenas? Do you know how many subpoenas it's issued?
What's that?
Do you know how many subpoenas the January 6th committee has issued as of yesterday?
You're trying in a very.
It's just a question. You might not know. It's okay. It's okay if you don't know.
We're not testing. We're not testing one another's knowledge of the intricacies of the committee here. We're debating.
Oh, actually, I am testing your knowledge of this committee, because if you don't understand why it's illegitimate, you can't defend it.
Major investigatory and news-making body here. I understand that you are desperate to find ways that you can justify not looking at this and not presenting this to your listeners. But and anyone can always dig into something and say, well, here's a reason I don't think it, here's a reason, this is a reason it's not legitimate. But the fact of the matter is, this is a major investigatory committee telling us very valuable information about a hugely traumatic thing that happened in the body politic.
Now, I understand why you believe that, Scott. I really do. I do. You're a lefty up in Boston, and everyone talks to each other. Do you understand why I think it's a circus and a joke? I mean, do you just understand it?
I understand that you are desperate to put forth reasons that will let you justify your position of not paying any attention to it because you find what it is saying uncongenial. But do I think it makes any sense? Absolutely not.
Okay,
no.
So you don't go with due process. You don't think the minority has any rights in a committee. You don't think the minority should be represented as ably and with equal opportunity to question witnesses as the majority. Only the prosecution. Only the prosecution gets to bring witnesses. Only the prosecution gets to name the jury. Scott?
To make that kind of sweeping statement, because I don't agree with your idea to say I don't agree with due process. It's just silly.
Well, you obviously don't. You are holding up a committee that is rigged.
Hugh, you obviously don't believe in the Constitution. If you don't believe if that's just a dumb way to talk. That's like poisoning the well. Come on.
No, it's not. It's because it's essential to due process to have the right to confront your accuser.
Right. Let's have a little more intelligent debate than that. I will say that here I think is part of the problem. That you guys put yourself in a position where if your position is going to be none of this is relevant because I don't like the body that's looking at it, you then have to ignore a huge amount of news that's coming out as a result of that.
No, actually, you don't. No, you don't. It's like saying, was O.J. Simpson guilty? I think O.J. Simpson was guilty, and I think it was screwed up, and I can find news everywhere. I do not cover this committee because it's an illegitimate committee. And what you don't hear me saying, what you don't hear half of America saying, is that...
I think you've made a huge and silly mistake there.
Yeah, you've used silly a number of times, but do you know anything about the precedence of the House?
We're just chasing our tails on this.
No, we're not. You're not answering questions which impeach the committee.
What?
You are refusing to answer simple questions, the admissions of which would impeach the committee's integrity. And so you are filibustering.
In your mind, it would impeach the committee's integrity. But as I say, you are trying to find a justification for ignoring the news. And that's fine within the context. I mean, you do what you want. You're an opinion guy. But I don't think it does a particular service to your listeners or your readers, and I think this is the debate this country needs to have.
I want to go back to the committee because again, Scott, I'm just trying to educate you here as to why.
Well, that's rather patronizing. And
it is very patronizing. I don't think you have a clue about this committee. I don't think you know anything about the House of Representatives, and I don't think you know due process, and I don't think you understand common law. And if you've ever been sued, you would understand this. I mean, if you went to the first, Sarah Palin's, let's go to common ground. I'll bet you we can agree on this. Sarah Palin's lawsuit was dismissed yesterday. Did you see that?
Yeah.
I'm glad it was dismissed.
You're kidding. Sarah Palin's lawsuit was dismissed? Wow. Huh.
Do you know why? Do you know why it was dismissed? Why?
Yes. Because it didn't meet Times v. Sullivan. It didn't meet the
That's
standard.
right.
There's no actual malice there. Yeah.
And so there's no actual malice or reckless disregard for the facts. And so it's been dismissed. It's going to go up to the Second Circuit. She's going to appeal the New York Times v. Sullivan standard, 1964 standard. I don't expect Scot Lehigh to know that. I've taught this case for 25 years. Sarah Palin is wrong. And I agree with the district court's dismissal. It will go up to the Second Circuit. And the Second Circuit cannot sit en banc. And I'm explaining this for you, Scott, and for the audience. So they will pick a panel of the Second Circuit. I think they use the same rules as the Ninth Circuit, 9 judges. So if they pick those 9 judges to hear the appeal of Sarah Palin, and the chief judge boots off any Trump appointees and replaces them with Obama and Biden appointees, is that due process?
This thing is going to be decided eventually by the Supreme Court anyway. So I don't think that really. I think that's a false analog. I know where you're trying to go with it, but
where I'm going is to destroy your argument, because obviously that's not due process.
You are using,
so you don't want to go down that road.
You're using process arguments as a shield to avoid.
I'm using the Constitution. I can't say things on this air. I'm using the Constitution. Do you not care about the Constitution, Scott?
Well, I mean, how can you then talk to someone who tried to subvert the Constitution and say, well, we disagree on the election, but we have a lot in common on a lot of other things?
Because I had to talk to him about the Supreme Court, and I have to talk to him about other things. And I know you're obsessed. The left is obsessed with the January 6th committee. But I'm not, and I don't care, because it's illegitimate.
The Constitution's a little episodic. I mean, I think if you can't bring up, if you can't sort of beard the lion on the biggest constitutional affront we've seen in decades, and I would say that you're.
Do you remember McCarthyism? Do you remember Joe Welch? Do you remember Have You No Decency? Do you know why that all happened to Joe McCarthy? Is because he abused the investigatory process of the United States Congress, and there was a minority council.
Are you seriously comparing this committee to McCarthyism?
I'm comparing process. McCarthy was discredited because it was a legitimate process. He was wrong. He was a red baiter. But the reason he could be exposed is because there were Democrats who could protect the witnesses. The witnesses could speak up for themselves, and they were not interviewed in secret. McCarthyism fell apart because of the Constitution's focus. The January 6th committee is deeply illegitimate, and no one should pay attention to it, because you are buying in to the original sin of suppressing the minorities' rights.
I think that's just horribly stupid. Sorry.
I hear you. I understand that. But I want my audience to understand that blue bubble columnists do not care what we think about the constitutional rights of the accused. You don't. You don't care about these 86 people. Did you know 86 people have been subpoenaed by this committee?
That's not right at all. And I find
Wait, 86? I got the list. 86 people have been subpoenaed by this committee.
Yeah.
So is that right, that they not have a Republican-appointed minority view with a counsel to ask questions? Is that right? They've got a grand total of 9 prosecutors and no defense counsel. Is that fair?
I think that I don't have a problem with the structure of the committee. If Republicans had not wanted, if they had gone forward in a good faith effort to have this panel, then I think that their concerns there would be met. And I don't think you can say, no, sorry, I'm just going to hold my breath until I turn blue, take my ball.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is it cannot possibly produce the truth. It can't produce the truth. The whole due process thing is about producing truth.
In your mind, do you think, to the degree you've paid any attention at all, do you think that anything that this committee has any of the things we've learned from it has been worthwhile? Or
I pay very close attention to it, no, and I tell members of the committee that. And in fact, what do you think we've learned from it?
Oh, I think we've learned a hell of a lot.
Tell me. You have the floor.
Well, we've learned about the Proud Boys, right?
What have we learned about the Proud Boys?
Well, I mean, we now have indictments.
Wait, what have we learned about the Proud Boys? You made the statement, we've learned about the Proud Boys. What have we learned about the Proud Boys?
You're not a Proud Boy defender, are you?
Of course not. But what did you made the statement, we have learned about the Proud Boys because of the January 6th committee. What did we learn because of the January 6th committee about the Proud Boys?
Well, there I'm speaking more of the indictment for sedition.
Yeah, so am I. I cover that because that's actually due process, and they all should go to jail for as long as the book will allow them if they're convicted of seditious conspiracy. 75 people have been charged. How many people went into it? Actually, that number's wrong. I get my right number. 725 people went into the Capitol. 725 people have been charged. I believe 75 of them have been charged with a violent offense. I follow that very closely because that's due process driven. I trust the Department of Justice. I'm a veteran of the DOJ and the FBI. But they have not had a witness in front of the committee from the Proud Boys. So you haven't learned anything about the Proud Boys from the committee.
No, as I said, I meant the indictment there. I did not. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm all into the indictment. That's why your column was unfair. I cover January 6th relentlessly. I don't cover this illegitimate rump parliament.
All I said in the column was what you yourself have said.
No, you cut it off. You made it sound like I don't talk about January 6th when it was clear in the context. I don't talk about the January 6th committee.
I mean, obviously, I hurt your feelings, I'm
no, you didn't hurt my feelings. You lied to your readers.
You've been kvetching about it the whole time we've been on the air.
I am kvetching. You lied to your readers. Does it bother you? I correct my columns when I get things wrong.
Exactly what you said.
No, you didn't. You cut off the sentence. You cut it off in mid-sentence. Play it again for the audience. Play it again for the people. Just stand by. Listen to Scott. Let's play it. Everybody in elite media, Manhattan Beltway media especially, focused on the censure of Liz Cheney, my friend, and Adam Kinzinger. Go ahead, play it, guys. And they missed entirely the real big deal, which is they adopted rules saying we're not working with the Presidential Debate Commission. I can pretty much guarantee you that that's an issue and that Liz and Adam are not going to be an issue in the fall of 2022 and in 2024. Why doesn't legacy media cover the big deal and they only focus on the 9/11 Select Committee, which is actually illegitimate in my view?
Because what they do, as you know, is they focus on the things that they think will help their cause, and their cause is the cause of the Democratic Party. And so they don't want to talk about the inherent problems with the Presidential Debate Commission and what that's going to lead to in 2024. They'd rather continue to talk about January 6th. Look, Hugh, I have strong feelings about that. I've said them publicly. I said it again today on your show. But enough already. You know, we saw it. It reminds me of the old Marx Brothers routine. You know, are you going to believe me or your lying eyes? We all watched January 6th. We all know what happened. And I think that, but for legacy media, what they want to do is continue to push that and push it and push it because they know that that's harmful to Republicans, and they can see that we're moving towards Republican majorities in the House and Senate without something, cataclysmic happening, and that's what they're attempting to cause. And so that's why they do it, and you know it, and so do I.
I do, and I never talk about January 6th because I like my audience. I don't want them to turn me off, and they're bored. They do not like it. It is illegitimate. Nancy Pelosi quashed the minority. And yes, there are two Republicans on it. Liz Cheney's been a fine spokesperson for national security for years. I don't know Adam, but they're opposite their party on this. Obviously, I just am curious. Do you think the blue bubble knows how absolutely uninterested America is in the January 6th Select Committee, which is actually a... All right, so Scot Lehigh, my proposition about your column, and then we'll come back to the larger issue, is that you did not listen to that, or you would not... You're a good columnist, you've gone a long time, or you would not have written what you did because it does not fairly represent what I said. I spoke about the 9/11 committee erroneously, meaning the January 6th committee before Chris talked. Afterwards, I said I don't talk about January 6th because my audience would be bored. There are dozens of reasons why this illegitimate committee should not be listened to. I'm clearly talking about the committee. You made it sound like I was talking about January 6th, and you followed it up with, if the rest of the nation, implying like Hewitt, were as authoritarian, cultish, conspiratorial, and willingly gullible as the Trump base, the condition of democracy wouldn't just be dire, it would be terminal. I think we're pretty bad in this country because we do not fairly represent the point of view of the other side. And I think you're guilty of that.
When I said authoritarian, I was not talking about you there. I was talking about the Trump base. But I do think that's a big problem in America. We have this authoritarian inclination in a certain part of the population, and a kind of a hunger for a strong man, and we're seeing it not just here, but we're seeing it, we're seeing it in half a dozen countries around the world. That I think is pernicious. I think it is a real problem. I think that people in some way are retreating from the messiness of democracy and wanting certainty and caring, I think, way too little about.
I think after we're done, Scott.
I want to make a couple of
Go ahead.
Very indulgent with you going back and forth on your litigating your hurt feelings over.
I'm not litigating my hurt feelings. Don't be dismissive of the fact that we disagree about a significant issue. Stop for a second, Scott. I do not diminish your credibility or your ability, and I do not make light of your arguments. I am not mad about what you wrote. I am mad that you're in the blue bubble and you do not concern yourself with listening, which I try to do.
Right, you have the whole time we've been on the air. You've been trying to diminish my credibility. Come on. But I want to say this about Christie. Well, we've got a second. Now, Christie's pandering a little bit when he comes on and says that to you. It acts as though you guys sit there and act like the big story is a Republican withdrawal from the Republican debate or the presidential debate commission, and that is somehow more important than the January 6th, and that should be the big story. Now, here's what Christie said. I think that, within just a couple of days of that interview with you, when he's kind of downplaying the whole thing in the January 6th committee, when he's talking with you, he goes on ABC and he says, let's call this what it was. January 6th was a riot that was incited by Donald Trump in an effort to intimidate Mike Pence and the Congress into doing exactly what he said in his own words last week, overturn the election. Then Christie comes on with you and he's all kind of mealy-mouthed.
He is not. I mean, that's just not fair to Chris. He was on 24 Hours earlier on ABC this week. I played that tape in the course of my conversation, a 30-minute interview with Chris Christie in which we touched on about 15 different things. He reaffirmed exactly what he said with George. I don't think you listened to the interview with Chris. I think you read the Daily Beast or other Mimi or Random or other lefty clip and snip, Media Matters, propagandists, and you took your point of view of that interview, which is very good, very substantive. It's posted. I always put up the transcripts. And you just ran with it because you were just going to toss in another, the Trump base is authoritarian and cultish, as opposed to principled when it comes to the January 6th committee, which is illegitimate.
Do you not find the Trump base somewhat authoritarian?
No, I don't. I think the Trump base is like the Democratic base. It's like a bell curve. There are people on the far fringe of both of them, and I don't worry about them. I'm in the middle. I think Mike Pence was right. He couldn't accept those votes. People have heard me call the election over from the day after the election. Anyone who listens to the show, Scott, who knows my work, and you obviously don't, and I don't blame you. My wife doesn't listen to my radio show. She doesn't.
I read your column in the Post. I mean, I'm not a regular listener to your radio show. But I will say this: think about this though. Think about you're an old Reagan Republican.
I am. I was in the Reagan White House. Yes.
Yeah. Think about the way that just the personal beliefs or the political beliefs of Donald Trump have restructured what had been. I mean, Ronald Reagan was a free trader, and he believed in markets. All of a sudden, the Republican Party, which had been basically free trade and believed in markets, really doesn't much.
That's simply not true. That's simply not true. Look at the platform of the Republican Party. We believe in retaliatory tariffs against China when China is acting with espionage intent towards the United States and is a predator. That's part of the national security peace through strength policy of Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
But you would say.
No, tell me what you think, and I'll tell you. Or ask me a question. Don't tell me what I'll say. Ask me a question. I'll tell you.
Okay, so the Republican Party under Trump has gone from a free trade party to a protectionist.
That's simply not true. I just told you that's not true. Rob Portman and I are exactly alike. We represent 90% of the party when there is illegal dumping going on. And when China is using predatory policies, you use tariffs in response.
It's not, good Lord, it's not just that. I mean,
I know, and he made a mistake on aluminum, and I banged him on that because it was crazy to hit Canada in aluminum, as did most of the party.
On newsprint, I mean, it's not like he's just going after China. I mean,
he has not taken the Republican Party to an anti-free trade position. That was your argument. He hasn't done that.
I think you would find that I mean, the guy who, if your nominee is and your former president is a protectionist, and
he's not a protectionist. He's anti-China, and he's telling America to reshore its productive capability, as we are doing in Ohio with Intel and in Arizona with Intel, because we can't be dependent on Taiwan because China can take it at any time. That's a national security Republican.
You're trying to put a shine on the secret.
Oh, geez, shine on it. Again, Scott, you can believe whatever you want. Don't tell me what I believe, because my audience knows what I believe. They've heard me say it for 30 years.
You're wrong to say that Donald Trump hasn't made the Republican Party a protectionist party.
He is not, because who do you understand the Republican Party to be?
Move on to another argument. The Republican Party used to believe in markets and the ability of companies to do what they want. You had Donald Trump threatening this company that you do that, I'm going to tax I'm going to tax you out of existence. That's not a...
You're just not, you're so far away from why we came on. I want to go back to it. Whether or not you have a duty as a columnist to represent the other side fairly. Do you?
We're chasing our tails on that one at this point.
No, now I'm talking about being a writer, being an opinion journalist. Do you have a job to do that involves educating your readers on what the other side really believes?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Do you, as a columnist, have the responsibility to educate your readers as to what the other side really believes?
Do I have a job? Well, do I need to lay out in every column?
That's not what I asked.
Okay, this is. I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, you. I mean, I do. In other words, I would say when I write a column about something that I believe in, do I have a responsibility to say, meanwhile, here's a voluminous argument that the other side has on this? I mean, I don't think that's done all that frequently. I sometimes give a nod to it, say that the other side would say I don't believe that for this reason. But
and by the way, and I think that's sufficient. When you do that, the other side believes ... Do you are you obliged to be fair about what they believe?
Am I obliged to be fair? Oh,
when you say, here's what you have to say, that, right?
Yeah, I mean, but it's always kind of a judgment about what.
But you didn't do that in this column about me. My feelings aren't hurt. I want the audience to know that Scot Lehigh is not trustworthy when he reports on Republicans, not because he doesn't want to be. I think you do want to be. I think you wrote a column based on Daily Beast and Mimi random excerpts, and it's simply not true.
This is about our 10th time now addressing.
Yeah.
I think
columnists are never called on the carpet for just being wrong and mistorting things.
What?
Columnists are never called on the carpet for simply stating things wrong and distorting things, and you're not giving up any ground here. I thought you'd say, "Oh." I honestly thought, Scott, you would say, "Oh, I didn't know that." You're right. You were talking about the January 6th committee. I should have made that clear.
Did the column quote exactly what you said?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It's simply, look, we'll leave that up to the audience. It's a completely misleading quote. I want to go back to this committee. You remember Watergate? Are you old enough to remember the Watergate committee?
Hey, no, look, when I came out, I had a couple other points I wanted to make here, just because I...
Okay, go. Take the floor. Make your points.
It doesn't hear. So I want to make one other point about modern republicanism and modern conservatism, and what I believe are the things that if you start to stipulate to, and this is kind of what I thought maybe you wanted to talk about a little bit, but if you start to, and you don't do this, I'll give you credit for this, but if the Republican Party is going to embrace Donald Trump as a future nominee and make its future about the embrace of the big lie that this is a stolen election, which I say I realize you don't believe, but then you have to, the party puts itself, and I'm someone who believes it's very important that we have two strong oppositional parties in America. But then the Republican Party puts itself at having to believe that any number of other well-intentioned people were in on this supposed big steal, that, Brian Kemp somehow is part of it, that Brad Raffensperger, who's an honorable guy, and somehow let this go. Then you have to believe that out in Arizona, that Doug Ducey, let it. You have to discount all the things that disprove this. You have to believe that even the silly cyber ninjas thing. I mean, how did they? You just have to discount all kinds of good people and evidence to embrace this. And I just think it's a huge mistake for the Republican Party to go down this road. Now, I have the idea that you probably, honestly, if you were forthright about it, think that's right too. That it would
if
be
you were forthright about it. And what is
that?
the implication in that? If you were forthright about it,
because I've seen you hint. I read a column where you were writing about Lawrence.
Ask me a question. I answer any question. I don't hide anything.
Well, let's ask right out then. Do you think it would be good for the Republican Party to renominate Trump?
I can't take a position on that because I'm going to do the debates. And so I go to Switzerland and I do not pick sides.
Why can't you take a position on it?
Because I'm going to moderate the debates for the Republicans. And if I endorse one way or the other. I did the same thing in 2016. I did 4 presidential debates. You may not be aware of that, but all through the debate season, all through that year, I never took a position on anyone because a moderator can't. Would you agree with me? If you're going to moderate a debate, you can't take a position?
On whether you think the person should be the nominee or not?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Come on, Scott. How are you going to sit there if I said, I think Mike Pompeo is a good friend of mine. I think Mike Pompeo should be the president. And I'm going to screw the rest of you. Now, that's the way Democrats run debates. I understand it. But that's not fair. You have a fundamental fairness problem. You really don't get it.
Okay, but what you're doing there, though, is, you could say, look, I'm not going to moderate the debates. It's a little more important for me to express my opinion for the party.
I'm the best debate moderator the Republicans have offered up in 40 years of this circus. And I gigged him. I gigged Trump. He's so mad at me for that nuclear triad question. It still comes up every time I talk to him. And so nobody gigged Trump like I gigged Trump. So I'm not concerned with your approval. I'm good at it.
You aren't, but I got to say in that other, the whole thing about, well, Mr. President, we disagree about the election, but we agree about so many other things. That you got to admit that's pretty lame. No,
I don't, because in fact I've talked to him 26 times on the air. I have made my disagreements with him repeatedly known. The audience needs to know new things, Scott. The audience knows what I think. They know what he thinks. They know I think he's wrong about those things. And they want to know about the new things. The new thing. Now, here, my turn. I want you to stop me when you come up with a name that you recognize. Just stop me, all right?
Rationalize things, honestly.
I hear you. You have contempt for the right. I get it.
I understand this because it's been kind of fun, but I have to file a column in like an hour and a half.
Okay, so, I need 10 more minutes. 10 more minutes.
No.
Stop me when you get to a name you know. Amy Kremer, Kylie Kremer, Cynthia Chafian, Carolyn Wren, Maggie Mulvaney, Justin Caporati, Tim Unes, Hannah Salem, Lyndon Brental, Katrina Pearson. Know that one?
I would be glad to come on and get up with you another time, but I really do have to go because I've got to, in my business, this is my third thing I will have written this week, but I've got a very early deadline.
Oh my God, Scott!
What?
I write 3 columns a week and do 15 hours of radio and do special report. Are you telling me you're overworked?
Well, you're a virtual superhuman, as we just.
No, I just do my job for 8 hours a day, and I talk to people when it might make a difference, as opposed to shout at them in print.
For an hour, and you've been able to litigate all your grievances and make clear how
little you know about the January 6th committee
being called part of the red bubble. So I'll leave you here, but it's been fun. If you want to have me back on, I'll be glad to come back on.
I have one suggestion. I want you to go down the street to Boston to the Kennedy Institute of Politics at Harvard, which is run by my roommate, my closest friend in the world, and he's a liberal Democrat. He makes an effort, worked for Clinton, Deputy Chief of Staff, Peace Corps Director. He makes an effort to call people before he writes or talks about them to find out what they think.
Hugh,
you should have done that. You should have
You're allowed to-
listened to
Boy,
the
come on.
interview.
You'll be fine.
You should have listened to the interview or called me.
Completely fair representation of what you said.
Again,
And
the audience will
which is-
decide that, but I want you to give you the
Audience
last
will
word.
decide.
You don't know
Conservative-
anything about the committee. You don't know about its departure from precedent. You haven't learned anything from it because the Proud Boys came from the indictment. Why is it legitimate?
We're just going back over the same territory here. It's you know, you're getting to the point where you're just pounding your shoe on the table. But nice to talk to you, old boy, and let's do it again. Bye-bye.
Hang up. Hang up. We haven't had a hang up in a long time. I'm not surprised. It's a irresponsible column, and he doesn't know anything about the January 6th committee. That's it for the interview with Hugh Hewitt today. Dwayne gets to type that, though. Thank you, Dwayne.